I'd like to give a special thanks to Global for their generous support of this program.
Look, the workplace has to support the work. It's got to support the work. The workplace is really having issues keeping pace with how people are actually working. What are their expectations? We've got to have a great space to support those great people. Good design is worth paying good money for. They want more out of the office, not less. But is there a flexibility to move things around? How is our industry evolving? We're also providing a lot of learning environments. What's going on with AI? The Zoom rooms, the technology room. We're seeing employees having to hack or change their workspace the way that supports what they actually need to do the job. AI is not isolating workers. Is it designed the right way for our teams? All of that has changed now. How can we make it better? The other thing that's on everybody's mind right now is it's not just about the cost. It's about the planet. It's about the well-being of everybody. Those younger workforces are growing and have more influence. That conversation about worrying about the cost of sustainability is really going out the door.
What if the way that we work has dramatically changed and we're struggling to understand what the purpose of the office is and how that workplace needs to change? For decades, we've designed workplaces for efficiency. Now we're being asked to design for connection, learning, performance, and more. At the same time, AI is accelerating change. Talent expectations are shifting, and the firms designing these environments are under pressure to reinvent themselves in real time. Welcome to What the F is Happening to the Office. This is the show where we explore how work and the workplace are evolving and what it all means for the organizations trying to figure it out. If you're involved in shaping the work environment, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who should be a part of this conversation. And if you haven't already, be sure to download our State of the Workplace report. It brings together insights from leading voices across design, research, technology, and strategy. It's free, and you can download it in the link in the description below. Today, I'm joined by Ken Baker. Ken's Regional Managing Principal for the North Central region at Gensler and a member of the firm's management committee. Ken has spent decades shaping workplace strategy at a global level, leading major client relationships and designing millions of square feet of corporate environments. What makes this conversation especially interesting is his vantage point, not just as a designer, but as someone running a large, complex design firm while navigating the same forces his clients are facing. Ken, welcome. It's great to catch up.
Bob, it's good to see you again, too. It's been a number of years since I left DC, but it's good to see you on screen here. Just a couple of more words about me to help the people viewing this. I started out my career in 1980 as a shell and core architect. So I've had the great vantage point for a number of years of working on the outside of buildings and the infrastructure of buildings, and then quickly made the transition in the mid 80s to interior architecture. And since then, I've made that my career. Lots of professional service from banks, corporate headquarters, and now I just passed my 30th year at Gensler. So it's been a great run.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You and I have both been in the business a long time, and I think we've seen a lot of things. If you step back and look at the forces reshaping the workplace right now, what are you seeing?
Great question, Bob. And I'm sure you'd agree with me. I think the workplace is really having issues keeping pace with how people are actually working. We're seeing employees having to hack or change their workspace because it isn't set up the way that supports what they actually need to do the job. And the other thing that's on everybody's mind right now is AI. What's going on with AI? How is it going to change? Well, AI, as we all know from our vantage point, is here to stay. And one of the things that we've kind of focused in on at Gensler is a global workplace design survey that centers on AI now and AI users. And we're seeing that AI is not isolating workers, but is amplifying the human side of work. And that the office space that I spoke of in the first point, is reaching a new equilibrium, I would say. Employees want more of it not less. They want more out of the office, not less.
What are organizations still not getting in terms of the workplace? Because I think that post pandemic, we've seen a lot of change, but it seems like everybody's still grappling to understand what the office is these days.
Again, I'm going to go back to the AI kind of focus on this. And those users that are utilizing AI the most are actually spending less time working alone and more time learning and collaborating both in person and virtually. I don't think the office is providing that opportunity at the moment. I think there's a misunderstanding out there that we're assuming that technology replaces human interaction when actually we're finding with our survey findings that it's amplifying it. We're seeing more specifically that these users, these power users as we call them, are three times more likely to work at innovative companies. And so organizations have an opportunity now to attract talent by meeting and exceeding these power users' needs, as we call
So if you look at the gap between how leaders are thinking, work happens and how it actually happens, now that we've got AI, where do you see the biggest gap?
leaders are assuming that work is swung from fully remote to fully collaborative. In reality, it's a balanced and nuanced equation. Our survey is showing that it's split almost evenly between working alone, actually about 39%. And I'm reading some of the stats here, and working with others at 40%. Yet the workplace, as it's designed right now, hasn't really caught up. And we're forcing it back to the comment that I made originally about forcing employees to hack or change their workspace to support the work that they need to do. So, really, what we're saying to our clients is that employers need to offer open co working spaces. They need to look at acoustical privacy and they need to allow technology to support these virtual meetings and spaces to break the day to day workload.
You and I are probably both seeing some of the same things where in the past, the office was the entire pie. And now I think the office is maybe it's still a big slice of that pie, but there's other options that people have. But we talk about a lot of flexibility that I think has come into the work environment post pandemic. So I'm curious how you see all those things fitting together. And I think there's also a struggle between the virtual meetings that we have, like this versus the actual in person meetings. So, how do you see the space changing to accommodate that?
I think it's changing on a lot of fronts, Bob. I think there's a focus on, obviously, I said, we need to support the technology. We need to make sure that we're providing all the things that we did for folks before the pandemic: great light, great natural light, great air, great, creature comforts in the workplace. But I think, taking that creature comfort thing back to get people back from their kitchen table back into the work field to the work environment, providing some things that are going to make them want to come back, want them to work with their teams in the office versus being working in their bedroom or their kitchen or their home office. And the focus on that I've seen with clients, the clients that we're working with to a great extent in workplace, is spending a lot more time visioning the space from a hospitality standpoint. What can we do? How can we design the workplace to support all those things that those workers need to get them to want to come back to the office and work with their teammates?
And what are you seeing? I mean, are there certain things that you guys are designing into office environments now that are helping that?
We're really focusing on a lot of collaborative environments where teams want to come together to work together, but then also really focusing on the what we would call focus or heads down time, where they can have private thought processes and put work together before they come back out and recollaborate with the teams. Likewise, we're also providing a lot of learning environments, conference rooms, and the Zoom rooms, the technology rooms. So they're fit for purpose and we could set things up. So if you need to have a call like we're having right now virtually, they can go into a room that's designed for that or can morph into that very easily. So it's a focus on socialization areas. It's the focus on learning areas. It's the focus on heads down time and it's focused on collaboration. But that socialization area is harkens back to that hospitality feel that we really need to bring back into the workplace. that our clients are asking for and the workers are asking for. Their staff are asking for that.
What you're describing, does it require us rethinking what the role of the office is entirely, or are there aspects of it that we need to adjust?
I wouldn't say that we need to refocus entirely. I think there's things that have been invented and have been implemented that are still cogent today. But I think that there's a constant need for how can we make it better? We're doing employee satisfaction surveys on an annual basis. The biggest focus of those surveys, or the biggest response that we get, is, on our own spaces, or how is the space designed for fit for purpose? Is it designed the right way for our teams to be servicing their clients, our teams to be working together, designing great spaces for our clients? Is our own space supporting that? And we're constantly looking at how we're doing as well. And we're bringing that information back to our clients. I do a lot of professional service firms. I do a lot of law firms. You and I are in a professional service firm. So there's a lot of symbiotic kind of data that can transfer between, a design firm and other professional service firms.
So that's a segue into, what I'm really interested in talking to you about is as a global design firm today, what are the big pressures that you see that are affecting the way that you practice?
Well, the big pressures are making sure that, it's hiring great people. The first thing we want to hire the best people. We want to hire as I call them, SMEs. We want those subject matter experts are going to be our intellectual capital that are going to get us hired by the best clients to do the best work. And we're going to be able to produce the best work. So number one, I think, is hiring great people. But then going back to what we just talked about, we've got to have a great space to support those great people. We've got to have all of those aspects of the space, the heads down time, the socialization, the learning, all the supports they need to do their job. And then, we also need to look at, there's other things that we need to look at too, is how is our industry evolving? How are we being paid for the work that we're doing? You got to pay people well, and we've got to continue to work on reinventing our value in the marketplace to prove that good design is worth paying good money for. And by the way, one of our surveys, which is really interesting, I know I keep using that word survey a lot, but our workplace surveys have shown that the companies that invest in good design and put that extra effort into how their spaces are made up, asking folks like you and me to design great spaces, those people are making more money, their retention is higher, and they're doing better in their businesses by focusing on great design.
Can we dive into that a little bit? Because I'm curious. I think a lot of times we're creating these experiences in the workplace is basically what people interpret in terms of what they see when they come into the office. So are we designing for the experience, or are we designing for the work that's taking place?
I think it's both. I really think it's both. Look, the workplace has to support the work. It's got to support the work. I mean, but at the same time, we're all humans. We like those creature comforts. I've got a green curtain next to me over here. I may not like it's not so much about the green curtain or the color of the curtain at all, but it's like, are we providing a pleasant environment for the work to get done? But are the ergonomics right? Again, it's back to some of the things that we've learned over the past 3 decades: access to natural lighting, good air, good coffee. I mean, food? Is there good food service close by? Then there's that technological support. Is it adequate? So we don't have to get in a car and drive down to necessarily meet with our clients face to face 100% of the time. We can have virtual meetings. That's fine. But are the facilities set up to support all of that the right way? So I think it is experience and infrastructure that needs to come together.
I'm curious what your clients are asking, the problems that they're asking you to solve today, and how they might be different from what they were pre-pandemic.
I'm hesitating on my answer only because I've had some great experiences with it. Right after the pandemic, our clients were asking our teams that were going to meet with them in person. And it was kind of a baited question with some of them, fresh out of coming back into the office from
being locked up at home working for a few years, they were asking, how do you feel? There are designers. How do you feel about being back in the office? And there were a few cases in those early days right after the pandemic where people were like, they had that comfort level of being at home and working and being able to eat lunch when they wanted or throw their laundry at. And we had a number of designers that would say that to the clients. I would then get a phone call from the client saying, look, we're focusing on having your firm help us bring our people back into the office. And one of your folks just told me that they really like being at home eating their lunch on the kitchen table. So I think that was early days. I don't hear things like that anymore. I think our people are really, for the most part, you've got some outliers, but for the most part, folks are happy to be back in the office. I know the days that I have to spend at home because I've got the plumber coming or somebody coming to fix the roof are not my favorite days because I don't like to be back at my home office doing the work that I'm doing every day. I want to be with, we all work in teams. And for the most part, our clients are working in teams too. And that camaraderie of teams is established when people meet face to face in those facilities that I've been describing in the first part of this seminar. We've gone from this traditional metric of square footage per person and efficiency. And I'm not sure what the metrics are that people are looking at today. Is it about like sustainability or is it about well being? There's a lot of conversations about neuroscience, that are all coming into the work environment. So I'm curious, what are the conversations like that you're having with your clients, on those particular topics? We've invested heavily in research. We have something known as the Gensler Research Institute. And we're touching on all of those aspects that you just mentioned. We're diving deep into all of those aspects because when clients bring those issues up in a visioning session at the start of a project, we want to be able to come to the table informed with the right kind of research that supports recommendations for workplace. So yes, if there are those physical aspects of the workplace that we've been talking about, but there's those soft aspects of the workplace too. Are we supporting flexibility in the workplace? People not having to hack their workstations or change their workstations because they've been designed rigidly, but is there a flexibility to move things around that it can accommodate different times a day, different situations, et cetera? But we are diving deep into research to support design. When you and I started doing this, there wasn't a lot of empirical study. You had a desk, you had a credenza, you had a chair. None of it was probably ergonomic at all. You had to crawl on the floor to plug a laptop. So you had to sit at a high desk, as we did as young designers, with roll ups and bars for putting our drawings together. But all of that has changed now across the board. And yes, ergonomics is really important. You mentioned sustainability, and I didn't mean to ignore that, Bob. The younger generations are really focused on what we're doing to the planet and are demanding responsiveness to sustainable aspects in the workplace. It's very interesting when I go start working with a new client, I can see that generational divide where some of the folks that have been in the business longer that are morphing from the decision makers to the next generation who are becoming the decision makers. Maybe the older generations we're a bit more focused on the cost of sustainability. The younger generations are saying the cost is well worth it. We have to do that. We have to focus on that. It's not just about the cost. It's about the planet. It's about the well-being of everybody. And we find that those younger workforces are growing and have more influence, that conversation about worrying about the cost of sustainability is really going out the door. I'm telling our teams right now, don't even ask, don't even discuss it. It's what we have to do. Bringing sustainable practices into design is what we have to do. It's like designing for codes. It's sustainability has to just be focused on. It's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. That's best practice. You were talking about the visioning, and I'm curious about the process and all these issues that are now rising to the surface. How do you see the process changing in the way that we design for our clients? I was telling you before we started this call, I just won a new project, which I'm very happy about. The first conversation when they called to tell me that we won, we're being appointed,
is like, when can we start the visioning? The clients really want to sit with us, Bob, in the room at their space, and they want to tell us how they feel about their new work environment or what their opportunities are. Likewise, they want to hear what other like clients are doing to raise the bar. They want to hear what their competitors are doing. Our client base that we have, where we can bring a lot of different ideas into those visioning sessions. Those visioning sessions are not just where they used to be, where we sat and got counts, where we said, if you're a law firm, we have 1,800 associates and 5,300 partners, and they're going to be in 2 window offices or 3 window offices or whatever the business was. It was more about quantifying a program. Now it's about qualifying a program. And they want to really get into the nitty gritty. And they also want to tour spaces. They want to see best practices. They also, back to AI, we're heavily invested in AI. We're bringing in videos to illustrate ideas where we used to be bringing in renderings. And we're bringing in AI videos with voiceovers that are doing tours about what the possibilities can be. We're bringing in more of the FF&E. We're bringing in the fabrics and finishes on an interior space just so we can get some feedback on what they think of colors, materials, and how the spaces are put together in an aesthetic way. And there's also another thing where ethnography has gotten to be really important in these discussions. Like, what are the makeup of the folks that are actually working in the space? What are their expectations? What cultures are they from? It's not just the business of them serving their clients. It's like the people that are servicing their clients have to be taken care of to do that in a good way.
Well, that's another thing I think when it comes to the process, there's been a shift to a much more human centric focus on the workplace. And I'm wondering, how you take all of those different values that people have and maybe, different priorities, but how do you manage the complexity of that? Because I think all of the requirements that are going into space now are becoming much more complex. The technology alone, I think, is a challenge, but then we have the sustainability, the well-being, the neuroscience, the biophilia, all of those topics now that have to be prioritized and managed as we go through. And so I'm wondering, in all of the clients that you're dealing with, how do you look at those things? How do you prioritize them?
I think the big challenge is gathering the information so you can disseminate it and kind of put it into continuums and kind of see what the themes need to be. They're all different. So again, I go back to law firms may look on the surface of all being the same. They all have the same basic parts and pieces, but they're used totally differently. From one to another, the relationship between all of those parts and pieces is a cultural thing. We're spending a lot of time. Those SMEs that I'm trying to hire in the marketplace right now are not just great designers and not just great technical leaders, but they are great business strategists. They're people that can actually analyze the visioning information that we're getting back in those upfront conversations. And we tell our clients too that we're not coming in with any preconceived notions about what's out there. We're giving you our research, we're giving you our findings on things, but there's going to be nuances that they're going to give us back, which we're putting back into our own databases and expanding it for the next person, the next time that we're approaching a new and different client. Those SMEs that we're hiring are really focused on business strategy as well. They're creating business strategy or disseminating a business strategy that we can put on, I call it like the designer's dashboard, putting it on the dashboard. So every line that's drawn on a plan for a new design goes back to that strategy and the goals and objectives that the clients have set out. And we want to make sure that the solutions, when we come back and we do a design presentation, that it's got basis in the strategy that was signed off on, developed in those visioning sessions.
Who's in the room when you're having those conversations?
All sorts of stakeholders. You got people in upper management, but you have a lot of folks at all levels. I mean, we're talking at all levels. And if they're not in the room, even for the strategy sessions, we're spending a lot of time and effort with our teams developing a communication strategy where we can take the data and the vision that and the goals and objectives that have been outlaid and present it, helping the client present that to the rest of their staff who are not able to be in the room. And we're doing that at key moments during the schematic design process through the design delivery process. So we before we get to what we call, putting the CDs together and before construction administration, that it's been vetted in the right way and we're getting feedback at great decision making points, not only from the design committees that are tasked with working with the architect or the designer to deliver the design and create the design, but getting more feedback from, the folks that aren't sitting in the room at various moments and communicating that back. There's a lot of what we would call town hall meetings where we're coming and presenting design. And we're not just presenting that this is what your design committee has decided. We're asking for feedback. And they're strategically placed on the project schedule. So if there are changes that we're hearing back, that design committee can say, there were some great points brought up in that town hall last night that you guys did. We really need you to take a closer look at some of those great suggestions. Let's incorporate that in. So when you get to the point, as you know, Bob, when they start touring the space, when it's being built out, we try to keep them out till, you know, slightly before move-in. All of that technology that we're bringing to the table to illustrate the design, it's not a shock when they're actually seeing it when they walk into the space. It's like you showed us what we were going to get, and this is what I'm walking into.
What I'm especially curious about is how does leadership look at these work environments today and what's changed from the way they may have looked at it 5 years ago?
Great question. I think leadership is finding out where through these journeys of the building the strategy, uncovering the goals and objectives, they're finding out things about their own teams that they didn't know before because we're asking the hard questions. They're asking us to ask the hard questions. So there's some surprising things that show up. The focus on some of these hospitality spaces. If you're going to want me to come back from, being at home and working in this environment all the time, there need to be some environments that are created in the workplace that you never had before. And I think it's not just about remember when the foosball table was in the cafeteria. It's not just about things like that. It's not just about putting a putting green off in the corner somewhere. It's really about, it can be for certain types of corporations, it can be a good wine bar that's planted somewhere. It's that concierge service in the office that can help some of the things that they would normally want to stay home and do, like how can the physical space incorporate that kind of concierge feeling that's helping people making their life in the office easier than it used to be.
I mean, I've often thought of the space as a leadership tool. Leaders can use, we talk about it attracting the right talent, but I think it can also be used to communicate the message or the culture, the
Culture,
artifact of the
right?
organization, so I'm curious now because I feel like things have shifted pretty dramatically from what they were a few years ago, where the space now has to become a better tool if we're going to accomplish what we need to with our organizations. I'm wondering from that angle if you see anything different that's occurring.
Well, I mean, one of the things I'm just looking at my on the screen right now, you could see the background to me. There's books and things on shelves. I'm not sitting in my office. I'm sitting in a space that's been curated. Artwork and accessories are another really important part of the environment. They humanize the workplace. They soften it. I'm sitting in a kind of a Zoom conference room, but the stuff in back of me right now while it's decorative, it also relates to the business that we do. You're seeing a lot more moments of that throughout the workplace than you ever saw before. In fact, the curation of accessories and artwork has become a very important, side business to creating the spaces that we're creating now. We always had artwork. Biophilia is another thing, green walls, plants. There was a while, I think you probably saw it too, where there was an aversion to oh God, let's not put plants in here, or allow people to bring their own things in, curate their own things. I think if you kind of set the environment, set the tone of the environment, the users are going to feel that they want to, they want to enhance that environment. I think these moments are very important in the creation of the space as
Well,
well.
I'm curious. I want to kind of shift a little bit to your role as a design leader and the challenges that you're facing with your own organization and your own space. And so, where are you actively experimenting? Right now, with your own offices. What kind of things are you playing with?
A few years ago, the ergonomics of the individual workstation became kind of the topic for introspection. It took a while to get there, but the sit stand, I'm looking out at our workplace right now, and most of the people are standing at a screen all day or have the ability to change the height so they can work at their computer, have their meetings standing or sitting. So there's ergonomics, are a big factor. Acoustics are a big factor. People want to work in open areas and be collaborative. They also need to be able to focus on focus, and they can't do it without a lot of noise and unwanted distraction. So there's a lot of study that we do on in our own offices about how to create the right equilibrium between collaborative areas and then heads down acoustic privacy and focused work. Then we're also, again, like we're recommending with our clients, creating upfront spaces that support the learning, which is a separate function, support learning. Do we have conference rooms or multi-purpose rooms that can be adapted for seminars and online learning, or having people come in and teach our designers and increase their knowledge base as well. And then I mentioned concierge services. We're looking at, how we support our staff and keep them focused on servicing clients, all the while helping them, get lunch in, helping them, are we bringing the right, our office services? We spend a lot more time with our office services team. Our office services teams are like hospitality experts now. They're really becoming savvy. The best ones are savvy on how to make our teams very happy with, in the work environment. Those are the finding those are SMEs that are very rare, and we're spending a lot of time trying to find them. Because those surveys that we do, these Gallup surveys that we do in our own offices are the biggest criticisms. We're all designers. We're designers, and they have really high expectations about what we're doing in our own offices to support us as we are to support our clients.
We had talked about AI earlier, and I'm assuming that you're implementing AI in some form or fashion. How do you see AI changing the way your teams design, not just what they design?
We're all trying to figure that out right now. And I don't think that we have the ultimate answer. It's changing monthly, it's changing weekly. The project that I just spoke of that we won it. I think one of the things that turned the tide for us was not only showing the some plans of the potential new design of the space, but producing a video with voiceover that really captured the culture of that firm. We have to be very careful about the way we approach those situations, though. I think it can be looked at as presumptuous and arrogant to walk into a potential new client circumstance and show a video on our vision of the way the space could be. We have to preface that with a lot of verbiage about this is one idea about what we could do. We want to use those tools to show our creativity, not to define the client at that early stage. Once we've got the visioning sessions behind us, once we've learned what the client's goals and objectives are, we can turn to AI and the capabilities that we have with AI, and then put their culture back into that AI presentation. It's getting sleeker and more sophisticated daily. The technology is getting to be wonderful. I think the AI video that I walked into really opened up their eyes. It almost became an infomercial for that client. I think that they were like, wow, you caught us. That was great. It was very thought provoking. They may not have liked everything that they saw in that video. Then the other thing you have to be careful of too is it's got to be very culturally diverse. You can't portray it like, with a bunch of Vogue models walking around in a space and well dressed and whatever. You've got to show the breadth of the culture and the people, the real people that are going to be using the space. So there's some gloss to it, but there's got to be a lot of reality to it as well.
We've talked about a variety of different issues that are being put into the space and how it's kind of evolved from an efficiency now into a more performance organization tool. Are you seeing new metrics emerge, or how are you measuring the performance of the environments that you're designing?
Those surveys that I'm talking about that I mentioned at the beginning of this talk are actually set up to do that. One of the things that we advocate right now is doing that workplace performance survey with a client before we've even designed anything. To a certain extent, the clients to co-author the way that survey can be put together, but there's certain tenets in that survey that keep it relevant so we can go back and match it up with data and compare it to other high performing companies. So we do that upfront survey. We start the design process, the visioning and the design process. And as we're finishing up with that design process, we're doing that survey again as they start to move into the space, comparing it to the beginning and where we ended up and how we've moved the bar to a better place. And then we take all of that data and we put it back into our database. So we're not only doing that with our own clients, we're doing it with other organizations that we haven't even worked with. So those workplace performance surveys, they're Fortune 500 companies, not all of which we've worked with. And we're also some of the old things that we used to do, which are still relevant, is benchmarking. So when I go and work with a professional service firm, I've got a huge store of benchmark data. Again, going back to the law firm example, just briefly, lawyers work on precedent. So finding out what their competitors are doing in the marketplace is very, very important. Precedent. They want to be the first to be second. They don't want to be, the first to be first. They want to see what's been experimented on, maybe not come out with that idea, but they want to see what are the trends. And then what we're able to do, what the exciting thing about it is that I think we're able to push the boundaries of that second idea and taking it to a place where it wasn't in the precedent.
How do you look at the performance of your own space? How do you make decisions on the types of things that you want to change or do? Is there something in particular that you look at to say, yes, this space is working for us, or this space might not be working for us?
I mentioned that survey that we do with our own people, and we do it on a yearly basis. The biggest controversial parts of that are not how people are rewarded for the good work that they do and how they're promoted and how they're paid. The biggest parts of that survey that we need to focus on are what the physical environment is. I'm sitting in a space that was designed 20 some years ago, and there's aspects of it that need to be changed on an annual basis. It's not just static. I've got 5 more years on this lease. Then we have the potential to move someplace else or to renovate this space. But those surveys that we're doing on an annual basis, the hardest part of those surveys for my leadership team is grappling with is the design of the space keeping up with what our needs are? They see what we're creating for all the clients. The survey is informing what the users are actually thinking of the space, and they're telling us the way we need to change it, which is affecting my operations budget, my capital improvement budget. We've got to invest a good share of profitability back into updating the space. The two things that our clients say and that, are the cost of people, their salaries and rewarding them financially, but it's also the cost of real estate and also keeping that real estate relevant to the operation.
So do you see people coming back because they're told to, or because the environment's actually worth the commute and coming back to it?
My partner, Todd Heiser, has a saying. It's like, returning to the workplace should not be a mandate, but the workplace should be a magnet. So we say, magnet, not mandate. And I really love that. Use that with clients, and clients are like, you got it. That's what we want our space to be.
You had mentioned earlier that the organizations that are back in the office are making more money. Can you share some more insights about what you found on that?
Yes, I can. I can very broadly. And I want to be real clear about this. we're finding that the bulk of the Fortune 500 companies that we've surveyed, the ones that are spending more time and more focus on what people need to get their job done in the right way are more profitable. Their bottom line is bigger. As you and I and designers can go into a new business presentation to get a new client and say, got to invest in good design, we can beat our chests and say, we want to design great projects. But what the story really now is, what the surveys have told us is that employers need to focus on good design to increase their bottom line. And that isn't just me saying that, it's the survey is proving that empirically. The companies that are focused on doing great design are actually more profitable. And that's kind of a broad way without getting into the nitty-gritty about the data behind that. That's the overall finding of the surveys.
I guess I'm curious, is there some particular aspect of that that drives that profitability, for the
It's
organization?
well, we look at their retention. Retention numbers are bigger and better. They're not there isn't attrition that people are leaving because they're not happy. There's based on spatial things as well as how they're paid and how they're treated. Absenteeism is less when the workplace is supportive and well designed. People are not calling in sick as much. The surveys are measuring all of that sort of thing as well.
If you look out over the next 5 years or so, how do you think the role of the architect or the workplace designer changes? How does that evolve as we look ahead with AI and technology and all of the issues that we're grappling with today?
Wow, that is a Miss America question, I really think. I'll look into my crystal ball. The pandemic, I think back on the pandemic, who would have thought prior to the pandemic that any of us would have lived through something as earth-shattering as that where everybody was sent home to work and survived. And you and I survived. Our companies survived and flourished in that environment. We're going to have other earth-shattering developments that are going to happen. I mean, we're seeing the way things are playing out politically and with world events right now. And our profession is reacting to it. I think sustainability is going to become more and more a focus. Our focus on sustainable issues is going to become front and center. Technologies, energy technologies, and designing to have a sustainable earth and a sustainable environment is really moving way to the forefront of our design more than I think any of us think it now. And AI is going to be used to help figure that out as well.
Here's your opportunity. If you had to challenge the industry with one idea to provoke us to think way ahead of where we should be, what would that be?
Focus on our cities, focus on the central business district of our cities or all aspects of our cities. How can we revitalize the built environment that's sitting vacant and dormant and not being used the right way? How can we as designers, architects and designers come up with new and exciting ways to hack buildings and hack spaces that are already built and revitalize those? I mean, a few years ago we were all looking at parking garages and people, looking at sustainability. Well, people aren't driving their own car to work. How can parking garages be reconverted or hacked into occupiable space that is vital to work environments? How can office buildings that are lying dormant be morphed into housing? How can housing start to take over housing at all levels, luxury housing, low income housing, middle of the road? How can those spaces be revitalized to take up some of the slack that are not being addressed by the way architecture was designed over the last 100 years? I'm sitting in downtown Chicago looking out a window right now at some empty buildings. We're going to developers with ideas that they haven't even paid us for yet. How can we influence the developer community to want to reinvest in some of those buildings and some great ideas that you and I need to come up with as designers?
Ken, I think we've talked about a number of topics here. It's been a great conversation. Is there anything that you'd left out that you think is important to add to this conversation?
I love design, Bob. I know you do too. And it gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm anxious to get to work. I just said I want a new project. I've worked with that particular client for many, many years, but I am so darn excited about the possibilities. I mean, even in this conversation, my mind is racing as to what we can do to take this particular company into their next 30 years of occupying their space. I'm just a nut about design. I love it, and it's something that I live for. And I should be nearing retirement. I keep telling my friends and my colleagues that they're going to have to burn the building down to get me out, but it's because of my excitement of design and how it's reinventing and what we can do as a profession for our clients and for ourselves.
No, well, that's great. I think the challenge about this industry is that we're always trying to solve some problem somewhere, and we get to apply our creative juices to it. So Ken, thanks. I know you're busy. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, and I'll look forward to getting together again soon. So thank you.
Bob, it was great to see you and thank you for having me.